Hi, and welcome to my journey. I've decided to record some of my inner processes to show you that I don't just preach, I actually practice and then pass on my learnings from direct experience to my clients. So the reason it's dark in this shot and I'm focused on a candle is because it's really, really late at night. And I've woken and can't get back to sleep. And I quite often see clients who have these difficulties. And I thought this is a great opportunity to actually share some of the processes that I employ in my inner world when these things happen. So I'll begin by just explaining what's going on. I've got that, well, I guess you could describe it as an anxious feeling flowing through my body. And when I tune into that, I can feel, gosh, I haven't counted them, but there would probably be hundreds of potential different thoughts that want to take me away with them. So, and they're all negative. So it'd be things like, fear-based stuff. Like, what if something bad happens to my daughter later in life, in terms of her first encounters with a male? And there's negative thoughts floating around like myself and my business, and there's, there'd be comparing thoughts where if I followed them, I would be seen in a negative way. Not as good as someone, not as deep into spirituality, not as fit, not as light. Like, gosh, that could be probably run into the thousands of comparisons. And its purpose is to always keep me in the negative. And there'd be lots of other negative thoughts that just aren't coming to me in this particular moment. But if I sat there for long enough, I would be able to see a constant stream of negativity. And that buzzing, anxious feeling is ever present with that. And along with that, there's also a constant other option. What I mean by that is I can also sense that, well, there's an alternative. Maybe I can't quite get to that alternative right in those moments when the negativity comes, but the alternative is there. And that's what I want to focus on. When this energy gets going inside of me, this anxiousness, and it can be caused by lots of different things. At the moment, at one level, if I just look at the physical level, it's caused by some adrenal issues. And somewhere in my day-to-day, I've not managed my intake of food in a way that fuels my body adequately or in the way that it needs. And so some adrenal fatigue issues are presenting with the classic symptom of being really tired early in the night, which is what happened. I went to bed at about 7 o'clock. And of course, then waking up or being really alert later in the night. That's what the flight or fight response does when it's out of whack. Then I could look at it at a spiritual level or emotional, but emotional, you could just get stuck in that forever, as I described a moment ago. Or spiritually, I can look deeply at myself at a spiritual level, and I can feel deep inside the changes that are occurring. And it's to do with, well, getting out of the ego, lower mind thinking, comparing, judging. So that's why that theme is present in this particular spiritual shift that's taking place. And so that takes me back to what can you do? Well, yeah, I could spend hours and hours running with that negative thinking. Of course I could. It's so engaging. It's so real. It's so believable. My God. Do your head in. It does do my head in. Until I remember that other part of me. The other part that I mentioned just a moment ago. The alternative, that option always seems to be there if we can find it. And this becomes the challenge, is early in the journey, you may not be able to find it because the stories of the lower mind are so convincing. You've spent thousands and thousands of hours, maybe even lifetimes, fueling that lower thinking beast. And so you might not be able to get out of it straight away. But with practice of self-awareness, practice of meditation, and for me, practice of Qigong, they all start supporting you towards finding that alternative, because it's in us. It's in every single one of us somewhere. And so faith, that's where faith can come in. Faith, knowing that alternative is there somewhere. And you can find it. It might not be today. It might be in the next moment. But it's there. And if we spend time looking for that, the spiritual energies attached or that support the alternative are so much stronger, more powerful than these lower thought form energies, even though it doesn't appear that way. But when you start practicing this with awareness, and gosh, you might need a teacher like I have. I've needed a teacher, and now I've become a teacher. But yeah, find a teacher, find someone to show you the way through the inner worlds so that you can find that alternative in moments like these, preferably every moment, but particularly in these moments where the darkness comes at you. And so that becomes my practice, finding the alternative, finding the light. And this is where you become your own best resource, is because you can go back inside of yourself. You can follow the pathway of good memories, if you like. What I mean by that is the alternative, when I turn and look towards it, when I feel for it, because remember, the darkness is all around me. But if I start to feel for that alternative, that other place inside of me, well, something happens. I start to go kind of tingly, but it's not that anxious, adrenal fight or flight stuff. It's something, well, it kind of starts to feel a little bit like the excitement of Christmas when you're a kid, or the promise of a treat when you're a kid. So something happens inside where I start to feel younger and tingly. And then I get visions. I start to see, well, at the moment it's just light, exactly like in this candle in front of you. But instead of just looking at it, I can feel it. And I breathe that in. And the tingling is the sensation of that becoming me, It's like it goes into every cell. Well, it begins to anyway. And it all comes down to focus, my ability to focus, and my ability to practice focusing on that alternative. And years ago, I wasn't so developed at this practice. So I would get distracted and I'd go back to the dark. And then I'd remember, there's an alternative. There's something else in me. I can go towards that. And I'd practice, I'd start it again. And then I'd get pulled away again. And again, and backwards and forwards, this would happen. And that can still happen now. But it's so much slower. And the time spent in the light, the alternative, is so much deeper and more accessible. And it changes me at such a deep level. So I'm going to continue that practice, focusing on the light, and hope this has helped you in some way for when the dark calls your name next.